Now with new details on the investigation into the death of actor Gene Hackman, including newly released video.
For decades, Gene Hackman was a master of the quiet life. In a world where celebrities are constantly on display, he chose distance, choosing the subtle power of presence over the fleeting glow of attention. No scandals, no tabloid feuds, no relentless social media updates. Just a life built carefully around privacy and craft. But recently, whispers have emerged that hint at something far more secretive than even fans could have imagined. Rumors began to surface that beneath Hackman's private property, there might be a network of tunnels, spaces he never mentioned and few knew existed. While details remain elusive, it's the involvement of the Federal Bureau of Investigation that has truly shocked observers. Why would someone known for simplicity and discretion invest time, resources, and secrecy into something hidden beneath his own home? And more importantly, what were those tunnels really for? The questions are simple, yet the answers remain deeply elusive. And as the story unfolds, the line between fact and speculation blurs, leaving fans and observers with more questions than answers. Could Hackman's retreat from Hollywood have been more than a desire for peace? Could it hint at a side of him the public has never seen? Gene Hackman was not an ordinary Hollywood figure. Born in 1930 in San Bernardino, California, Hackman grew up in a working-class environment. Early life was marked by financial struggles and the challenge of finding one's place in the world. His childhood was far from glamorous, and yet, it shaped the actor he would later become. Disciplined, introspective, and intensely private, Hackman rose to fame with roles that showcased his range. Gritty detectives, morally complex men, and figures of authority. His performances in The French Connection, Unforgiven, and countless other films demonstrated his ability to transform, to inhabit characters completely. And yet, despite the accolades and fame, he never seemed comfortable in the spotlight itself. By the early 2000s, Hackman made a decision that surprised many. He retired from acting quietly without fanfare or explanation. No farewell interviews, no publicized reflection on his decades-long career, just silence. He moved to a secluded lifestyle, spending time writing novels and enjoying personal hobbies. To many, it appeared to be a peaceful retreat, a man choosing tranquility over the chaos of celebrity. But the silence sparked curiosity. The less he engaged publicly, the more speculation grew. Was he simply tired of fame, or was there something he was guarding? Something about his private life that he didn't want to share? For years, fans could only guess. And then, faint whispers began. Not about his career, but about spaces he kept hidden. Spaces beneath his property, possibly unseen and unrecorded. If Hackman wanted peace and privacy, why would rumors begin pointing to secret underground spaces in his own home? What could possibly be hidden beneath the life of this famously private actor? Hackman's home was a reflection of his personality. Isolated, understated, and removed from the constant gaze of the public. Nestled in quiet surroundings, the property offered expansive spaces, natural beauty, and the privacy he valued above all. To an outsider, it seemed unremarkable, a safe haven for a retired actor. But even the most ordinary properties can hide unexpected details. Over time, observers noticed subtle irregularities. There were mentions of unusual deliveries at odd hours, construction work that didn't appear standard, and landscaping changes that seemed deliberate. Small things that most would dismiss, but in a man like Hackman, they suggested intention. Neighbors offered little information. Some didn't notice anything at all. Others were careful not to speak. The combination of isolation and secrecy allowed the property to exist largely unnoticed. Yet, for some, these small signs became the basis for curiosity. Why such care? Why the hidden modifications? The question became harder to ignore when the whispers reached people with authority. Reports suggest that investigators, including the FBI, began paying closer attention. Not due to scandal, but due to the unusual nature of the property itself. Hackman had no history of legal trouble or public controversy that would warrant such attention. The focus shifted from above ground to below. Suddenly, the property was no longer just a home. It was a potential site of hidden passages, carefully constructed spaces that raised new questions. What purpose could these tunnels serve? Security, privacy, or something entirely different? And when authorities began their investigation, it was no longer speculation. The tunnels became more than a rumor. The mystery deepened. What exactly did they find beneath the quiet surface of Hackman's life? The involvement of the Federal Bureau of Investigation changed the nature of the story. While specifics remained sparse, their presence suggested something beyond ordinary curiosity. Hackman, after all, was a man who had lived quietly, avoiding the usual trappings of celebrity. Reports indicate that authorities focused on aspects of the property that were unusual, not merely decorative landscaping or private renovations, but spaces designed with intention. Hidden entrances, reinforced areas, or tunnels may have existed. It's unclear what initially triggered the attention, whether it was a tip, a routine check, or something else entirely. For the public, the notion of Hackman under scrutiny was surprising. He had no history of crime, no controversial dealings, no known threats. And yet, the presence of federal investigators cast a new light on his quiet existence. The story began to shift. Hackman was no longer just a private man. He was a figure entwined in a narrative of secrecy and hidden spaces. The idea of tunnels emerged, not vague crawl spaces, but potentially deliberate constructions. Passages that could be navigated, designed with purpose, and possibly intended for something meaningful. Speculation ran wild. Were these tunnels purely practical, or did they serve a psychological or personal function? The story became more than curiosity, it became a puzzle. People wanted to know why a man known for simplicity and subtlety would have invested time in such secrecy. The presence of the FBI suggested that the mystery wasn't entirely trivial. But discovering tunnels is one thing. Understanding their purpose is another entirely. What were these passages for, and why were they so carefully hidden? According to reports and accounts from people close to the property, if the tunnels exist, they were structured, planned, and deliberate. Unlike typical basements or simple underground storage, these spaces appeared to have a purpose beyond convenience. The design implied security, privacy, or long-term planning. Some theories suggested Hackman may have built them as a personal retreat, a way to maintain solitude in a world that rarely allows it. Others speculated about safety. Hidden tunnels have historically served as emergency shelters or escape routes, but there were more intricate questions. Were the tunnels a psychological statement, a manifestation of Hackman's need for control and privacy? Was it a reflection of the way he withdrew from Hollywood, not only physically but emotionally? The more observers discussed the design, the less clear it became. Some even wondered if Hackman's experience portraying complex, secretive characters influenced his private life. Many of his roles were men with hidden motives, layered intentions, and private worlds unknown to others. Could he have carried some of that into his personal existence, constructing literal hidden worlds beneath his property? Yet, the tunnels themselves raise more questions than answers. Were they completed, used, maintained, or merely conceived as a possibility, a private experiment in solitude? The deeper the discussion goes, the more the questions multiply. If the tunnels exist, what purpose did they truly serve, and who else, if anyone, knew about them? Whenever secrecy is discovered, theories inevitably form. The internet, media outlets, and casual observers alike have speculated on the tunnel's purpose. Some suggest a practical explanation: storage, security, or a retreat from the outside world. Others lean into psychological theories, imagining a man preparing for extreme privacy, perhaps even for a scenario of long-term isolation. Hackman's life and career feed these speculations. He was known for discretion and careful self-presentation, qualities that seem almost at odds with Hollywood's culture of exposure. Perhaps the tunnels were simply an extension of that discipline, a personal sanctuary hidden from the gaze of the world. More dramatic theories propose that Hackman's retreats could have been inspired by safety concerns, a desire for control over his environment, or even long-term planning unknown to the public. Some speculate a psychological motivation, reflecting his need for private spaces to decompress and protect his inner life. And yet, no matter the theory, each remains unconfirmed. There are no verified details about the tunnel's construction, purpose, or use, and this uncertainty fuels fascination. The more is unknown, the more the story grows in the imagination of the audience. Speculation fills the gaps left by secrecy, and in many ways that speculation becomes a part of the story itself, shaping the narrative even more than confirmed facts ever could. But while theories abound, the most pressing question remains: what, if anything, was actually verified about the tunnels? Despite widespread attention, confirmed information is limited. There are no public records confirming the full extent of the tunnels, nor clear statements explaining their purpose. Even the involvement of federal investigators remains shrouded in partial reporting and anecdotal accounts. The uncertainty itself is telling. It suggests that the truth may be layered and complex, not easily reduced to a simple explanation. Was Hackman's property misunderstood? Were the structures misidentified? Or was the story deliberately kept private, out of respect for the actor's wishes? Observers are left navigating a space between fact and rumor. Without full disclosure, every fragment of information becomes a potential clue, but also a source of speculation. In this silence, the mystery grows stronger. The lack of answers doesn't diminish the story, it intensifies it. Hackman himself has never publicly addressed the tunnels or the investigations. His retreat into privacy is consistent with his lifelong pattern of discretion, leaving outsiders to interpret events from fragments. In many ways, the lack of confirmation becomes part of the narrative itself, reflecting Hackman's enduring commitment to a life away from public scrutiny. It's a story where absence speaks louder than presence, and mystery replaces clarity. The public fascination endures because the unknown often captures attention more than what is plainly visible. If facts remain elusive, why does this story continue to fascinate? What does it reveal about our relationship with mystery and the lives of those we think we know? Silence can carry immense power. For Hackman, it has always been a defining feature of his identity. He stepped away from Hollywood not with announcements or apologies, but with quiet finality. He allowed his work to remain, and himself to fade into the background. In the case of the tunnels, silence does more than protect privacy, it shapes the story. Without answers, observers and fans are left with imagination and conjecture. The narrative evolves, not through explicit disclosure, but through what remains unspoken. This absence of information highlights something profound. Humans are drawn to the unknown. We are captivated not just by what exists, but by what might exist. Hackman's life, in this context, becomes a mirror of his art, a reflection of complexity, secrecy, and layers that cannot easily be understood. And while the tunnels remain a topic of speculation, their existence, confirmed or not, serves as a lens to examine Hackman himself. They raise questions about the ways individuals protect themselves, the extremes of privacy, and the psychology of withdrawal from public life. The story continues not because of concrete facts, but because silence itself has weight. Every unanswered question adds depth to the narrative, making Hackman's choices, and the mystery they create, more compelling. Ultimately, the tunnels are secondary to the larger question. What does this story tell us about privacy, secrecy, and our desire to understand lives that are deliberately concealed? Stories endure because of what we don't know, rather than what we do. The idea of hidden tunnels beneath a retired actor's property challenges assumptions about ordinary life and public personas. Hackman, a man whose career thrived on complexity and subtlety, becomes even more enigmatic when private spaces are suspected to exist beyond view. Perhaps the tunnels were practical, perhaps psychological, perhaps both, or perhaps nothing at all. The point is not confirmation, but reflection. Hackman spent decades portraying men with depth, hidden motives, and layered intentions. In some ways, his real-life choices mirror those characters. A life lived with intention, concealment, and an emphasis on personal truth over public validation. In the end, the story is not about tunnels themselves, but about human curiosity. How we interpret silence, how we fill in gaps with imagination, and how we respond to the unknown. Hackman's life demonstrates the enduring tension between visibility and privacy, between narrative and mystery. For fans, observers, and the public, the fascination persists because the unknown invites exploration. It encourages questions, speculation, and reflection, an engagement that persists far beyond facts. Hackman may have retreated from public life, but the story of his property, the potential tunnels, and the mystery surrounding them continues to captivate, challenging assumptions about privacy and fame. And so, the real story may not be what lies beneath Hackman's home, but what lies beneath the way we understand the lives of those we admire. In silence and secrecy, we often find the most enduring mysteries.